Next up, we have big mental shift. Understanding that you can try to find the extremes of life, or you can value the delicacy of this gift of life. By seeing this world as a gift of life on thin ice, you understand the value in working to your full potential to help as many people as possible experience joy from life itself, or experience positives that will make it, quote unquote, worthwhile for the sake of being alive. And this is, a very subjective thing, but in my books, in my case, there was a period of time where I was going through some stuff. And I'm going to summarize this because I know I've talked about it a few times on the channel, or, just I've mentioned it roughly, but for summary's sake, and because I've documented this on my own private reserves and I'm not trying to point fingers or anything, I'm just going to lay out what happened. I came from a family that was pretty solid. There were a few rebuttals in the house, but it was nothing major. It was nothing to the point of I wanted to run away, because at the end of the time, we would always forgive each other, and there was always a positive outcome in the long term. And at the end of the day, I now see that although there may have been, clashes and altercations between certain people in the family, or between myself and certain members of the family, or whatever, at the end of the day, there was always there was a hint of altruism, or, there was a family member that was always trying to look out for my benefit. Whether or not they understood where I was coming from, their intentions were pure. There was never an intention of sabotage. It was simply just due to the information and due to the, path of their life compared to the path of my life, we found differences in opinions, and that led to disagreements and arguments. But no matter how, gruesome or whatever you want to call that, those disagreements and altercations may have been, they were for the better, and all is forgiven now within the family. That's phase one. Phase two, this is the big whoopsie daisy. In high school, I had a doohickey with a person. It was a rough relationship, and it turned out to be more of it was a big set of secrets. It was a big set of borderline blackmail, and it was not good. So it was a period of my life when I felt like I was hopeless and helpless. And it was a point of living that I really would not wish upon my worst enemy. It was when you can't even wake up and trust any of the, opinions and beliefs that you have in your own body, in your own mind. You don't want to deal with the world because you feel like you're not part of it anymore. And it's truly a discomfort. It's a feeling of mistrust and uncertainty and chaos that I don't want anyone to experience. It was it definitely left a stain on my being and my desire. Not my desire, but it left a stain, and it definitely tinted my lens of perspective toward the world a little bit, at least toward relationships. And then after we got out of that, so that happened right before COVID, or right before a certain event, and that certain event then followed through, to which I was at home, I was cool, I had my friends, we played some video games, and I kind of recovered. I felt like the sense of belonging, and I felt some friendship that I'd never really experienced before in high school because my time was spent in this relationship. Anyways, so the lockdown ends, we go back in person, and I get invited to come to some leadership conference, whatever the case is. And at this conference, life's chilling, life's good. And I get falsely accused of sexual assault. Not great. Really no bueno. Again, seriously, it was false. It was closest I ever got to this girl was maybe 10 feet. Completely false. Rumors. Anyways, so I got this accusation. Not great. Long story short, lawyers all went through, and I was determined to be innocent, and the allegations were ruled false, and the girl admitted to it being false, and whatever. But sucks. Just kind of left a stain. The thing that really hurt was when I was at this place, this camp outside, this whatever, and I was told that I was accused of this. I was pulled away by the chaperones, and they were telling me, hey, people are saying this is the case. Is this true? I say, no. Telling them what happened. Maybe I'm trying to rationalize. I'm like, maybe who else? Someone may have done this as a prank. And he said, no, I don't care what you say. Since you're a guy and you're older, we have to take her side, and you just have to take the blame today. Bye. And then they essentially just sent me back to my room in this little cabin for a while. It was not great. And again, this feeling of helplessness, oh wow, yeah, that is something I really don't want people to experience. The feeling of helplessness crept back into my life, and it felt like I had made an escape and I'd made progress when I was able to spend time with my friends during the time away from in-person high school. But it came back pretty intense, and it was rough. It was not enjoyable. I was not a fan of that, and I was definitely tinged from it a little bit. Definitely experienced some sadness and some more perspective shifting, if you will, some lens tinting, if you will. And those two events, primarily with those girls, two different girls, by the way, almost a year or two apart, by the way, definitely left a mark on how I perceive relationships and how I perceive my future and how I perceive a lot of things that I do. But because of that one thing that was relationships with girls, just relationships in general, being such an intense thing for a high school guy going through puberty, just getting hit with all the hormones at once, it was a prison. It was a prison beyond comprehension. It was like, if it really, man, it led me to try and find my way out. And the one way out that I found was through mindfulness and through a little bit of mental mapping. So I really got into psychology because psychology broke down the idea of the ego, id, and the superego. I may be butchering those terms, but the idea is that, or at least the one that I resonated with more in terms of psychology, was the idea that you have a primary soul or a point of observance. You have, this is a really bad attempt at drawing this, but you'll have your soul here perceiving everything. You'll have a circle around it, which is your your conscience, emotions, your logic, your controllable, your 20% of your logical, or your brain's thinking energy that you can control, whatever that is, surrounds that. There's a bigger circle, which is your subconscious. That's all the, the stimuli around your body, your healing processes, whatever. All that surrounds that as a bigger circle. And then around all of that, right, so you have the I in the middle, which is your soul. You then have your conscience. Then you have your subconscious. And then all the way around that, you have all the stimuli from the world, which, for us, that could be anything coming through the senses and anything in between. So, me seeing this tree or these three trees, and me seeing this tattoo, which isn't a real tattoo, on my arm, the temperature outside, it's maybe mid 60s in Fahrenheit. The smell right now, it smells like pine needles. The texture of the floor, it's concrete, whatever. I literally broke down my point of existence to escape this prison that I'd ended up inside of. And this is a topic I might break down into a different video if you guys want, but that was the survival mechanism that I found. That was how I got out of this intense desire for relationship and intimacy, while also experiencing immense pain simultaneously because of those two events that occurred with those two girls. Feeling like I was trapped, feeling like I was helpless, and feeling like it would never occur because my two attempts in the past had failed pretty dang bad. So it put me in a state of kind of, one could say, analysis paralysis, and it was not a great time. It was not a point of development. It was definitely a point of, at the very least, it was a low point. But at a certain point, I rationalized existence and my perspective of life down so much that I was able to relax and kind of take a breather, because I realized, at the very least, the soul, this thing in the middle that I believe is me, technically isn't, the one in control of all these rings around it. It's kind of all happening to me, and it's my choice whether or not I perceive that, not even as true or not, but if I perceive that as something that I need to act on. In other words, I created this sort of buffer and this around my soul in the middle, and then the conscious, subconscious, everything else. I created this buffer of reasoning, this soul superpower, which was essentially just a distance that I created deep inside of my mind to allow myself to observe these things occurring without actually reacting to them. And I think that's been a key attribute to a lot of my success. It's been, or at the very least, my success in the mental health game. It's giving myself that crumple zone, that time to see the thing before it hits my house, and being able to maybe push the boulder out of the way, or put an umbrella in the way, or whatever. And then being able to actually think about, what's going on, dissect it, maybe think about it logically instead of emotionally, maybe think about how my behaviors based on the stimuli will affect me emotionally or in real life with logic. Whatever the case is, it gives me time, gives me distance, it gives me comfort to separate, me, assuming that this little bubble I'm in right here is my soul, from, let's say 10 feet away from me. There's my stimulus, there's my emotional and mental reaction flying at me. So I can stand here and I can say, I'm not going to think about that garbage relationship. I'm going to decide that it's a thing in the past, but I can appreciate the fact that I survived it. So I take a little piece of it, and then it eventually hits me. And when it comes to hit me, when it does finally come to hit me, it will be, not too crazy. So this is definitely super off topic, but that was my kind of like mental framework that got me through a lot of things. So yeah. Now I've come to a point where I'm satisfied with life, and I make these videos because I want people to understand that there is more to life, and the easy way out is never the answer. But by understanding that, the one thing that I'm currently learning and I'm working to understand is how truly delicate life is. Because I've lost some friends. One of my good friends from classes here, he passed away in a heat stroke a little over a year ago. Almost, a year and 2 months by now. Another good friend of mine from my freshman year of college, who I mostly just spent time hanging out with and getting food and, going out. He passed away during gang violence somewhere in Georgia. It was rather unfortunate. And then there was my neighbor who recently passed away from a heart attack. And my neighbor was a great guy. He would always talk to me about business ideas, and it was a very unfortunate time to see him go. So, these lives of mine, they meant a lot, but I'm still truly learning the magnitude behind the delicacy that is our lifetimes, or that is our existence. So, I am in no way, shape, or form a master at knowing these, but I believe that, by trying to see the details and the depths of the beauty that is what has brought us to live, whether or not you believe in religion or, whatever other means of existence you believe in, if you can just appreciate the fact that, in a world of still matter, let's say in a world of still matter like this grass, humans exist. And on top of that, we have technology. We build buildings, this video is being recorded. There's a ton of complexities to be drawn out, but we can always count our blessings. And at the end of the day, we can also just, slip on the pavement one day and injure ourselves to the point beyond repair. That's the beauty and the dichotomy of life, being so dang delicate. So my future goal is to attempt to really milk and understand all these really vivid details behind the delicacy of life, and as well as the dichotomy of how complex and beautiful it really is. Because I believe that by seeing these two polar opposites, I can form a true yin and yang. This is a really bad drawing of a yin and yang with my finger. But my goal is to try and see, truly what will be going on. Maybe not. My goal is to truly see just how massive that gap is. Because I think when you understand that there's such a beauty in the life, there's so much energy between these two. There's so much effort that has separated these two. Maybe through that, lens, you'll see, through that gap, you'll see just how insignificant any effort from any single person is, and how beautiful and how wonderful the effort of combined humanity is. And for that reason, you'll be motivated to do more with your life and contribute meaningful things and pay it forward, which is, I guess, the ultimate form of altruism, or life in general. With the goal of life genetically being to procreate and to extend the species' existence further, maybe the beauty and the gift of being a human being that can logically think is the ability to create creations, I guess, like the scooter, like this backpack, which can outlive, your designs. I'm not saying permanent, but your designs can definitely be held for however long your chosen society lasts, and whatever intricate details you can think of. But your hard work and effort can extend beyond creating people, and it can extend into creating better lives for multiple hundreds of millions of thousands of whatever people. And you can just put more leverage and put more great things into the world and give more to this life than you took just to get inside of it. And on that note, I conclude this video. See you guys.